And so, what actually is it that sets us free? What actually is freedom? What actually is the true freedom in this life? The freedom that we're longing for, the freedom that the heart is called to because it already knows. So yes, the freedom is the knowing of true nature. It is the knowing of the love that we are. There's a freedom in knowing that we're not divided, that we're not separated from wholeness. And yet just the knowing of true nature, it brings a certain sense of freedom, but it doesn't necessarily bring a total sense of freedom. And what we're longing for is that freedom. We're longing for a freedom that is absolutely whole. Mm. And so what actually really brings us to a sense of freedom, in truth, is the combination of knowing the true nature and yet the magic is in actually knowing that we can face anything, being undisturbed in the face of life is the true freedom. Freedom from the mind, freedom from feeling to be held captive by the mind. In a way, the ability to face anything and to know that you are that which is undisturbed is the true freedom. It's like having the master key that can open anything, right? That can transmute anything. Knowing that you are undisturbed and that you can face anything is the disappearance of fear, the disappearance of the fear that something will happen that you can't handle, something will happen that you don't like. On so many levels, fear can hold us captive. But in the knowing of true nature and the depth of realization that you can face anything as the undisturbable peace, that you have the capacity to meet, illuminate, and transmute anything, because you know ultimately that there is only light, that there is only love, and that that deepest part of your knowing that there is only light, there is only love. When this can be the constant that we remain in contact with, no matter what arises, then there is a sense of freedom, of true freedom, that we can't be hooked, that we can't be dragged about into the mind and the sense of being a victim to life. And essentially that's what the freedom is, that we don't feel a victim to life, that we don't feel kind of held at ransom by life, that we don't feel tossed around. And of course that is true power. It's true power. And true power is the power of the source. It's not someone's power. It's being in connection to true power. There's something in here about how when we are really clear about what we are longing for, when we have a sense of clarity that we are longing for freedom, when we have a sense of clarity that we're longing to know the oneness with God, we're longing to remember the love that we are, that where there's a certain clarity, that clarity itself acts as a kind of one-pointedness. And that one-pointedness isn't necessarily the mind's ideas, where the mind can say, well, I'm not good enough, I'm not trying hard enough. It's that the one-pointedness is where the heart knows and has like an arrow-like, laser-like one-pointedness, that this is what I'm longing for. I'm longing for freedom. I'm longing to remember. I'm longing to be free right here on the surface of life. And of course, however those kind of words come, but what freedom really is a freedom from the mind. Being free from being tossed around by the mind, by believing the mind, being held in concepts and beliefs and ideas, living within convention, living within the vocabulary of should and must and have to, and realizing that that itself is a frequency that is not free, right? So when we speak about freedom, we're of course speaking of a frequency of freedom. And then we start to notice, well, what within the frequency field of the way that I habitually move is not the frequency of freedom? Where do I not feel free? Where do I move and behave? Where do I feel bound or held or trapped? Where are there maybe glass ceilings? Really, any sense of not being free is like an incredible clue. It's a messenger. It's showing us that there's something that we can open to. And the opening to is not about fixing and changing. It's not about solving a problem. It's about illuminating. And this is the glory. The glory is that we illuminate in order to come to freedom. And that the deepening revelation that brings us to a sense of true freedom is the ability to remain and meet and face whatever arises in the play of life. It's this ability to keep meeting whatever arises in the moving, changing landscape without leaving the knowing of what is not moving and changing, right? And it's a joyful adventure. It's an adventure of life, because life will bring in the opportunities to see and recognize where we do not feel to be free, in order that we can meet the seeming edges and realize that these are evolutionary edges. These are the working edges that we're being given in order to break orbit and open beyond where we are currently living. And that's exciting, right? It's really exciting to be in an empowered adventure within your own life, to not feel like a disempowered wave that is just being tossed around as a victim, to feel that Not that you're in control, because control is protection, but that you're embodied in a power. You're connected to the power of Source, and that you have the capacity to face life, all of life, just as it is, without being disturbed or moving to that victim mentality, knowing that you have the master key is the key that opens anything, right? Like a ghost key, right? It can open anything. And of course, that key is the depth of your presence, the depth of presence and ability to meet and be with whatever is arising. That we're not held captive by the mind. And that when we move into a sense of constraint where we're in belief or concept or idea, or we're in the frequency of fear, essentially, or doubt or lack, that in this we don't feel that sense of freedom that we're longing for. And realizing that the master key is not out there is also really, really important. Realizing that you are within your own presence, within the light of your being and the power of your belonging to the one source, that you are the master key, right? That it's not out there. Nothing can give you a magic pill or bullet or practice or gaze or whatever, right? Nothing can give you that capacity. Only you can give yourself that capacity. And the capacity comes through this sense of one-pointedness, a sense of like a resolve to remain. And as we move through the play of life, the adventure of life, we come to realize through our own exploration how we are feeling more free, how there's a sense of freedom. And so such an important part of this unfolding is being reflective and really being open and questioning and really noticing what is happening in your unfolding, so that there's not a sense of being powerless in the way that I don't know what to do. Like I don't know. There's an I don't know in the sense of the me, which is really true. But there's not a powerlessness, because when we're connected to the true power, we're connected to Source, we're in the frequency of belonging. We're in the frequency of being docked in the heart of God, being in the frequency of the wide open unified field. And here is the knowing that what I am is unshakable. What I am is unshakable. And yes, there is like the evolution is that we feel like I'm unshakable, and then something shakes us. And we feel like I'm invincible, and something dive bombs us and throws us off, right? And we feel like this time it's for sure. This is so clear. This is so clear. And then something comes in, enters stage left and knocks us off our feet, right? But what is it that allows us to meet all of these curved balls without being thrown off, right? It's the knowing of the truth of who we are, the knowing of the presence, and the knowing that the presence never moves, never changes. And that in the knowing of the presence, we have the superpower to meet anything and everything and illuminate and transmute and realize that nothing that feels like fear can actually have the power to take us away from the love that we are. So our superpower is love, of course. Superpower is divine love. Because in the presence of love, everything sees itself. In the presence of love, everything knows itself. In the presence of love, there's clear vision. In the presence of love, the things that seem to matter to the mind don't matter. In the presence of love, there's a sense of knowing and a sense of wholeness that isn't in the realm of the karmic play and cause. So it's not a love that is with condition. It's not a measurable love, and it's not a love that can be diminished, right? It's a love that is pure, unconditional, and whole. So pure love, divine love, perfect love, spotless love, right? It's the love of God. And so we could say that we enter the love of God through the love of God. We enter the field of love, the love of God, through the heart's love of God, the love of truth, the love of love, the love of reality, the love of Divine Mother, the love of the glory of the Lord Shiva, right? Whatever it is, the love of Krishna. Whatever that love is, whatever name we may call it by, it's a love actually of the one and only, of divinity itself. It's a love which is an internal love affair, really with yourself, with the light that you are, the revelatory knowing of who you are. And in a way, love is an openness. It's an unconditional openness. And again, this is where the key is, the master key is in this unconditional openness, the ability to stay open and in the frequency of the unified field, which is the frequency of the field of love or grace or bliss or blessing, whatever we want to call this field, this one glorious field, that when we are in a resonant frequency knowing of our oneness with this field, there's a sense of freedom that can only deepen. And at some point we realize that, wow, nothing can shake me. Nothing can shake me. And in that, we could say, well, perhaps something could come in that you couldn't imagine that could shake you. And the truth is, yes. But if you know that you can be with whatever shakes you without the absolute source of your knowing being shaken, knowing that whatever happens in the life is God, is the glory, is love. That as we deepen into this, it's almost like an internal mechanism of entering the flow of surrender, entering the flow of pure surrender, of pure devotion. It's entering into a frequency flow that is the flow of integral wholeness. And it's entering the frequency flow in a way before maybe it feels like our true knowing has gone all the way through. I could say that in the unfolding here, that there was the knowing of God, the glory, the mother, that was unquestionable. And yet if something came in, it could create a disturbance, it could create feelings, but it never shook the knowing that said, this is your love, Ma. I know this is your love. It didn't matter whether I was on my knees, on the floor, whatever feelings were coming, there was always a knowing, right? So just sharing that as an illustration, that it's because we can create these mental concepts of some kind of perfection, mental idea of perfection. But the true unfolding is a wiry adventure, right? It's an adventure into the inner landscape, and the entering into the inner landscape is not like a walk in the grass, right? It's rugged terrain, for sure. It's rugged terrain, right? And it's as we walk kind of the inner path, the inner landscape, that we find the resolve, that we open to the mechanics and intelligence of consciousness and how this all works. It's not that we get thrown off when we meet a dead end or we meet rocky terrain and we're like, how am I going to navigate that? You know, I'm on my knees. It's this inner knowing that says, this is all God. This is all love. I know this is love. And it's accessing, you know, it's not a conceptual accessing, it's accessing the frequency of our knowing. And accessing the frequency of our knowing is accessing the presence, the frequency, the resonance of the presence of being. It's accessing what is not moving in this moment. And of course, this deepens as we refine and refine. Our ability to access is easier, simpler. How we know that becomes more intimate. But it's through accessing this and yes, we're accessing the transcendent field, but we're accessing the transcendent field with an openness that is not leaving and trying to get away from what is happening, but it's including it, and it includes it at the level of, okay, monster, you are God. Okay, whatever, you know, challenge or emotions or feelings or situation, whatever is here, there's something here in me that knows that this is the love of the Divine Mother. This is the love of God. This is somehow the one. It has to be. If there is only one, this has to be that one. And this is where we might open into that prayerful silence or communication that says, show me, reveal to me. I'm here for this. I'm saying yes to this. I'm willing to feel this. Maybe even thank you. Thank you for shaking, because I know this is somehow a message that's bringing forward the possibility to open more deeply to you, to a finer frequency of remembrance, of knowing, right? Because all of life is a message. All of life is the messenger. And either the play of life and the appearance of life is a reflection of reality that just feels like celebration and the frequency of heaven, or it's playing in perfect accord and companionship to show us, reveal to us by grace where we are not free, so that we can be free, right? It's not showing us where are you not free, and then there's like a sort of, you know, an evil meanie laugh that says, ha ha ha, you're not free. It's saying, this is where you're not free, my love. This is where you're not free, and I am showing you by the grace and the glory and light of your own knowing that what you are longing for requires that you can see this and include this part of you, that you can include this, include every part of you, and you will feel a freedom. If you do not divide and separate, you will not feel like a victim. If you do not divide and separate and project and blame, you will feel free. If you do not enter into the frequencies of unconscious guilt and shame and lack and deficiency, you will realize that you are free. So look out in this light. Be the looker light, right? The light that's looking, that's aware and awake, that's seeing, okay, here's disturbance, here's resistance, here's frustration, here's agitation. And it's okay, welcome, welcome, welcome frustration, welcome agitation, welcome anxiety, welcome stress, welcome resistance. It's this ability to be the open field that includes it all, that shifts the frequency from identifying with the frequency of fear and lack and doubt and guilt and shame, to being this wide open frequency field of love that is all-encompassing, powerful inclusivity. The incredible, simple technology of light is illumination, is the principle of illumination. And the principle of illumination is that everything is light. There's only one substance. The principle is that the principle is the oneness. The principle is only one, only light, only God, only love, only this, right? And so as we open to the principle of illumination, we realize that we are the power when we are docked in the heart of God, when we're in the wide open field of presence, the unified field, we are the power to illuminate. We're resourced from divine light, from pure love, from spotless love. We're resourced to be the radiance that can illuminate and shine upon. We are the presence that is ever loving and inclusive, embracing, blessing, right? Welcoming. And so this wide open field of presence is so powerful. And the technology is so simple. Wow, right? The technology is so simple, right? You just plug in to the mothership. You plug in to the glory of the heart of God. And you receive the frequency so that your nervous system is being charged and is resonating at the frequency of presence, of still silent presence, of being. And yes, we open to finer frequencies where we know this is love, this is pure love, this is the glory, this is God, this is the purity and innocence of the wide open heart. This is perfect love. And we refine to come to this like really clear revelation. And the revelation, of course, can only come when we're in the field where revelation is possible. We have to be open to the revelatory field. We have to be open to where remembrance happens, right? And so as these words come and we receive the transmission frequency and we recognize in the field the intelligence of this, it seems so obvious, right? It seems like, oh yeah, wow. Yeah, that's really simple. Okay, wow. Yeah, so I've got the master key. And yet what has us forget that we've got the key in our pocket, right? You've got the master key that can open anything in your pocket, always. That you're never away from that. And it's the willingness to be an intrepid explorer, an adventurer within your own inner landscape. And in a way, not be at the surface of life, feeling like a victim. This is hard. I don't know how to be with this. To just stop. Boom. Just to stop. You're already in the power field. Just to stop. And just be here. And just in the being here, there's a natural opening to the presence, the silent, still presence of being. You can feel that resonance, can feel the frequency of being. That it's all encompassing and it's just right here now. The stillness, the silence, and the simplicity of just simply being. That this is your adventure. And it's a glorious adventure into the innermost realms, the landscape of consciousness. It's not exploring the psyche. It's not exploring in a psychological way. It's not trying to shift things in the psychological realms. And yet, of course, as we open to the field, the landscape of consciousness, we're also opening to the frequency field of what is unconscious. We're just entering our innermost feeling, sensing field. And we could say, in a way, to start with that, what we really enter is more of the revelation of the somatic field, where we can feel and sense. It's like entering the nervous system, entering the consciousness, the moving, changing field of consciousness. But where the magic really starts to happen, and why we would say that we're not exploring on the level of psychological, is that the magic can only happen when we enter the boundless field of the infinite, because we can't discover the unlimited in what is limited, and the psychological field is a limited field. We need the presence of the unlimited so that we can truly open out of limitation and remember the unlimited, boundless nature, so that we can open out of the sense of being a victim and held and bound by the mind, the thoughts, the beliefs, that we open to the boundless field. And it's the boundless field that is the field of light, the field of grace, the field of the glory. This is where the love is, the openness, right? It's an open field. And so as we enter that open field and then we look upon, this is why we might say we start with wholeness. We start with the celebration. We start with the glory. And in the knowing of this, we look upon whatever feels to be hard. We look upon the places that don't feel to be free, and not as a project, but we just stay very present with what is here now. We're not using the mind to try to excavate or push. We're just fully present with what's here. And as we become more and more adept at just resting and illuminating and meeting and feeling and transmuting, this is where the insight and the intelligence of the field starts to be more and more finely revealed. And we start to see within our inner functioning how this works. We see how it works. And seeing how it works is part of realizing that we have the master key to unlock and transmute and bring everything home, to welcome everything in a way that freedom is freedom from the mind, the freedom to welcome everything, to truly, really, completely and utterly know that nothing matters. Nothing matters. No thing matters. It doesn't matter in the way the mind makes things matter. And yet, we're not saying in that there isn't meaning in life. It's that we actually really can start to enter the meaning of life, the true meaningfulness of life, the glory of life, a life that is truly being lived, explored as an adventure, a life where we are willing to receive the messages in the ways that we are given the messages. And the messages often come in things that feel challenging. And that's because it can take those challenging things to really get our attention, to stop us, to slow us down, to invite us into the depth of possibility and the freedom that we're truly longing for. So part of the freedom too is the knowing that everything that is happening is supporting my longing for freedom, whatever it looks like. That somehow this too is unconditional love. This is the wild and ruthless love of the Divine Mother, right? She's ruthless because she loves so fiercely, right? Kali Ma, she loves so fiercely that she wants to give every being what the heart is truly longing for. Of course, within the play, that is like a frequency field where the mother is wanting for her child to know, you are a child of God, of the glory. You are not divided. You are not alone. You are not lacking and deficient and unlovable. You are so, so very loved. You are so loved. You are so held. You are so blessed. You are so safe and so seen. More than the mind could ever know. You are so, so held, loved, seen, blessed, safe, so incredibly loved. And when we can really, in a way, tap into the recognition in the heart that this love is here and this love is loving, so profoundly loving. And yes, there are times in the life where things can arise where it feels like, how is this love? Or we can reflect and say, well, how was that love? You know, if we from a place of division try to find out how was that love, something hard that happened in the life, we will never be able to find it. So in a way, it's a fruitless task to try to understand how was something hard that happened in the life love, because we can't find it in that way. We will, through knowing in the presence of our own evolution and our own heart, coming to discover what love is and how we are love and how God is love, and God is not punishing and God is not mean and unkind. When we really come to realize this in our lived experience, we then have the capacity to include whatever happened in the younger life, usually, that was hard, to see how that was somehow love. It was love attempting to balance out the karmas, the karmic field. It was a play that had to happen in order to set us up to be able to access really hard feelings in the unconscious. You know, it can be said that when a soul is really ready for freedom, that the life that soul enters is extra hard, right? Many of us will be like, oh yeah, thank you very much, glory, right? When a soul is ready for freedom, that life can feel extra hard. And at this time where consciousness is really evolving and the consciousness is inviting humanity. The divine is inviting humanity to remember its divinity and evolve. And that movement is happening. It starts to create what seems like chaos and craziness. And that's where we're so deeply invited to stay rooted and not be taken out by the chaos that seems to maybe be happening, well, on the surface of life, definitely seems to be happening on the surface of life through most filters, right? But what we're being invited is that, so our lived experience is like a microcosm of the macro, right? So if we attend to the micro, we're affecting the macro. And yet the macro is affecting our micro, right? So what we could say is that the macro, what we see on the surface of life that disturbs us, that breaks our heart, that tears our heart open, that feels so wrong and awful, that is the macro affecting our micro. And so it's bringing disturbance. It's bringing the possibility that we meet what hasn't been resolved within the karmic field for us, so that we can have the possibility of meeting those feelings, right? So when we receive the macro in the micro through the somatic field and in the wide open field of love and blessing, we have this capacity to realize that what is happening in appearance and how we're seeing it, the filters that we're seeing it through, the filters are the places in us that are not free. In truth, when there's freedom, whatever we see on the screen, we just know, well, that's God, that's love. We know that the future isn't something terrible happening. It's not that we're, that something awful is happening. We actually know in the frequency of love of heaven that what's happening is something incredibly potent, that humanity is being shaken as if Kali Ma is just wild, fierce and wild. But her fierceness is a compassionate fierceness. She's not a fierce evil that's making bad things happen. What makes bad things happen is the collective consciousness being in separation, right? bad things happen, hard things happen, because the collective is in separation and division, and the power is imbalanced. That's the frequency field of fear that makes seeming bad things happen. But ultimately, if we can stay and remain in the love frequency and not be pulled into the fear, let what we see happening crack our hearts open so that we can be releasing and clearing the frequencies of fear at the micro level, then that is affecting the macro. That as we become unshakable in the frequency of love, the reverberations of our micro are affecting the macro, right? So everything is one movement. If we are pulled in to separation and we're collaborating and making allegiance with separation, then we're part of perpetuating the seeming bad things happening. Now that's a different perspective of seeing, right? That if we're in separation, that we're part of perpetuating that to stop perpetuating that is to live at the frequency that isn't so much collaborating with the fear or trying to be a problem solver or a do-gooder or a peacemaker on that level, but that we're actually entering a frequency field that truly can make a difference. So we're not trying to be, let's say, a peacemaker, but we're being peace. We're being peace itself. We're not trying to do good. We're being goodness. We're being the glorious goodness of our own knowing. We're in the fullest of our compassion when we're fully being boundless compassion. And so, yes, there's absolute compassion for every being that is in division, because any kind of separation is suffering. Any kind of separation is misery. Any kind, right? It doesn't matter whether the picture looks like absolute chaos and horror, or whether the picture is actually just shopping on Amazon for some more things to decorate my house with, so that the neighbors will think that I've got a lovely house, right? It's all separation. There's no hierarchy in the play. There's no hierarchy in the illusory field, right? In division. It's all the same, right? So, Mrs. Jones having a tea party to raise a bit of money for the hungry children that are victims of war, and just talking and perpetuating the fear. Isn't it awful? Isn't it awful? And everyone's in that fear frequency. Actually, okay, on the surface of life level, the money that gets collected for buying a few cakes or whatever is seemingly like a doing good, but that frequency field cannot actually make a difference. The frequency of love is the only thing that can make a difference, right? So if instead Mrs. Jones drops into her the silent presence of love and invites her companions to come and have tea and cakes, but let's not talk about the misery and the struggles and the challenges and be in that frequency of fear. Let's join in the frequency of love and know there is only love. And somehow this is the Great Mother's way of shattering the delusion, right? And now the group, Mrs. Jones and her companions, are in a frequency of love. Now they're making a difference, right? Now they're making a difference. They can drink tea, they can eat cakes, right? But it's shifting that perspective. So instead of doing good, being goodness. Instead of collaborating with the fear, being the love, being the field of love. Letting the macro affect the micro. Let whatever feelings come, let it crack our hearts open. Let it bring the anger that hasn't been fully met yet, right? Let it bring the frustration and heartbreak, but don't project it out. Let it be what catalyzes the micro. Let it catalyze the micro into a field of love and blessing. Because when you are a field of love and blessing, you, instead of collaborating with the fear, you start blessing. You start loving with and start really being a force of compassion and holding, right? This is where the difference starts to happen. This is where we are speaking about being the change, living as the change, being willing to change, right? Remember that we have the key. We are the master key. And that in that field, we have the capacity. We have the key to open everything, right? And as we deepen in this and the intelligence of this, it starts to be a wow that is beyond what we could even open our mouth for in wow, right? It starts to realize that you have the key to open everything. Yes, everything, everything. So do you have the key to world peace? Yes, you do. You do. It's about living it, being the peace, letting the micro of your lived experience affect the macro. Let the micro of your gatherings affect the macro. Let your life be a living reverberation of love. Let the life be a living frequency of peace and harmony. Discover every place within you that is in conflict, battle with yourself, disharmony. Find every place within you. And as you resolve that, let the reverberations of your harmonizing and rebalancing and opening to be the living unified field, the Atman, let the reverberation of your life be your offering, be the graced gift that you offer to the whole of humanity. That the whole lived experience is an offering. It's potent. It's incredible. It's so, so beautiful to live this life, right? To really be in the adventure of this life and to let go of the poor me and, oh, I don't want it to be like this and I want it to be like that and I wish it was this, to realize that you have that power. You have that power to shift the frequency field. And in a way, our gathering, our joining is about being immersed in the field. And in the immersion in the field, right? We're at the living frequency of love and openness. And as we join and we really are being this living field, it's like we're getting saturated, immersed, infused in the frequency of love, where the frequencies, here it comes again, the light, right? The, the as we're immersed here, as we're saying yes here, and we're living at this frequency, that what is discordant in the life starts to shift. What is discordant in the life starts to repattern into the frequency of love, of divine love, of pure consciousness. Everything that feels hard in the life, the places that don't feel free or that feel stuck, start to recalibrate in the frequency field in the presence of love. It's mystical revelation. It's magic beyond the mind's understanding. It's true magic. And what we mean by magic is that which cannot be explained by the mind, by the time and space locators. It's that which is unfathomable. It's what happens in the quantum field, the field of intelligence that has an immediacy. It shifts, it morphs. It's creating reflection. It's creating life out of the substance of itself. You are creating your life out of the substance of yourself. And either you are thinking yourself into limitation, or you are resonating yourself as a field of love, and resonating life as a field of love, right? There's nothing in the life that is an obstacle to that. Even beings in the life that it could seem like, well, that one's not doing the work though. That one's not doing the work. It doesn't matter. Everything is a reflection of you. Everything is part of you. Bring it home in your heart. Bless every single part of yourself and bring all of yourself home in your heart. Create that reconciliation in the heart of oneness so that you are a force of love, a field of love, a field of blessing, a field of grace, of light that is just moving silently. And you could be a secret agent, or you could find yourself making expression. It doesn't really matter. Your offering is your life lived at the frequency of love. The offering is your life lived, and lived, you know, in the unique flowering, living in absolute truth to your laws of nature, singing and dancing and creating as a flow of inspiration at the frequency of love, right? It's not about locking yourself up or remaining on your cushion and never leaving your room, right? It's not about that. It's about actually living your laws of nature so fully, so freely, making no excuses for yourself, not needing to explain yourself, not needing to fit in, not needing external permission, because no one can give you permission to be yourself, because no one knows the uniqueness of the flower that you are. Only you know. And you only know when you're aligned and being resourced from the love of God, right? You only know when you're aligned and being resourced, when you're resonating at the frequency of love. It also means that your intuitive knowing is back online. Hallelujah, right? In the young life, we generally left ourselves because we started to follow the command and orders of our caregivers and parents and guardians. And so we lost connection with our intuitive knowing, because in order to stay connected and survive, we needed to make an allegiance with those that were caring for us. And it was sensible at the time, it made sense. But the truth is that we've never lost that intuitive connection. We've never lost the knowing of the being that we are. We've never lost the glory of our oneness with God. We've just masked it. We've just been moving in habitual limited patterns. But the truth is that we don't need to be moving in those limited patterns, that we can actually open fully to the fullness of our functioning. We can illuminate and rejuvenate and recalibrate the flows of consciousness that are the nervous system. And we can bring a bioenergetic renewal even on the cellular level, that releases the light codes in our DNA that have been dormant, that can release capacities that we have, multidimensional capacities that we have that are yet untapped. And so as the words come, it's always about just really feeling into and resonating with what is being spoken at the level that you receive it as a yes. And if you don't receive it as a yes, then just let it go. That's okay. Yeah. But where you can receive the yes, it's that you, the intelligence that you are, the light that you are, is coming online. Those light codes that have been dormant, the intelligence, the wisdom is coming to life again. It's like you've been been dehydrated, and you're getting saturated with the goodness that kind of rehydrates the sponge, right? You start feeling really nourished and resourced, that you're suddenly just, you've got fuel. You've got true nourishing fuel, so that you can open to the finer capacities. Remember the light that you are. And there's an intelligence that is moving everything. In the field, we are one field of consciousness. And as the flows of intelligence of our joining, of our field, are being illuminated here and enlivened here, there's a refinement happening in every being according to the capacity and the openness and the readiness. In a way, your being here is like a holy yes. Your openness, your presence is the holy yes. It's like the barrier's up. And so the light just comes in, and it just starts recalibrating and reorganizing, upgrading, bringing online the capacities that have been dormant and untapped, bringing the ability to resonate at the frequency of love and really remain and have this resolve, like upgrading the nervous system and the consciousness to the more subtle patterning, like the subtle body patterning that can actually really maintain presence, maintain a finer frequency, so that the field of your lived experience feels more drenched, more saturated in love and remembrance and glorious light. So just this open receptivity here, openly receiving the frequencies that are coming to you by virtue of this field of light, by virtue of your holy yes and your pure and open heart, by virtue of your longing for freedom, by virtue of your love of God, by virtue of your love of the Mother. Everything is being given. You are being loved right now. You are being blessed right now. You are being held right now. You are being embraced in a field of absolute divine safety. And you are being recalibrated and restored to an original innocence, to the capacity that the system is ready for. And in this, the frequencies that are coming are frequencies of remembrance that say, you know, this isn't something that you have to work at in the way that you've imagined. It's not something that you have to fix and change. It's truly about being open here to grace and letting grace have you, right? That you lie down at the altar of grace and you let grace have you. You let grace into your functioning, that you let grace into, whether it's, you know, the the seeming incapacity or struggles with the body and physicality, whether you let grace into your bank account and your economic situation, whether you let grace into your family dynamics or your relational dynamics that seem dysfunctional and hard to navigate, whether you're letting grace into the sense of your heart and wanting to stay open, whether you're letting grace into your nervous system because you can feel like, yes, please refine my nervous system and bring me greater capacity. Show me what I'm wired for. Show me how I can be an instrument of your grace. Whether you have your own unique way of expressing what it is that you're opening to, whatever it is, it's letting God in, letting Mother in, letting the light in. Just actually just realizing, what am I committed to? Am I committed to protection? Am I committed to scarcity? Am I committed to not trust? Am I committed to feel like I'm a victim to life? Am I committed to feeling like I'm unsupported? Am I committed to feeling like I have lack and scarcity? What am I committed to? Am I committed to being physically unwell? How is there secondary gain somehow in there for me in being committed to limitation? How is there secondary gain? Or let's say, how has there been secondary gain to me being committed to a consciousness that is limited and lacking? And can I, in this moment, let the abundant flow of God's love into every area and be absolutely saturated, infused, and immersed and restored in the glory of the light of wholeness? Right. So as the words come, you will notice that certain words trigger a response in your system. And that trigger response can be like a charge, or it can be like an aha, like oh wow, yeah, I'm totally committed to not trusting. I'm committed to feeling like I'm broken. Wow, right? What if I'm committed to the miraculous? What if I'm committed to the grace of a depth of healing and clearing that is the restoration of the frequency of love in all of my functioning? What if I'm actually just committed to the love of God and I let the flow of the love of God into all of my functioning? Right. So wherever there's a seeing, that's an illumination happening in your system. And where an illumination happens, the light is getting into something that has been unconscious. And that's where the magic happens. That's the alchemy, right? The distillation, where that which has seemed like pain and suffering suddenly is realized to be bliss and love and openness, right? So we shift our allegiance to love. We shift our allegiance to the glory. We shift our allegiance to a holy, almighty yes, forever and ever, right? For eternity. I am eternally yours. I am the eternal silence. I am love eternal. I am the eternal glory, right? We shift the allegiance to the eternal. We shift the allegiance to the infinite, unbounded, unlimited field of possibility that is so far beyond the consciousness of the mind's capacity to even imagine. And yet we open to a field of creative intelligence that is inspired. So we can start to feel inspiration and aliveness and creative flow. So just to notice the frequency field now. Notice what you're noticing. Noticing the frequency of the field of your openness. And just the open receptivity. You may notice more light. You may notice subtle pulsing or aliveness or like vibrational sense of frequency, or you might not notice anything at all. But every being is being worked on. The light is always working on us, always upgrading and recalibrating, and love is always loving us. We're never ever alone. And this is where we realize that we can open to this and realize, wow, I'm never alone. I'm so loved. I'm so blessed. I'm so held. I'm so safe. And here I can just be in like a communion prayer internally. Whether that's a prayer of gratitude. Thank you, Ma. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I know this is all your love. Thank you, great glory. I know this is all your way of freeing me. I know that you are constantly bringing upgrades. And I say yes and yes and yes. And I'm willing to see what I cannot see. I'm willing to be shown. I'm open. I'm willing to let you into the areas of my functioning where I have been protected. I'm willing to let your wisdom be the guiding light. I'm willing to not know anything. I'm willing to let go of everything that I've thought that I was life and just follow you into myself, into the glorious light of all that is. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. So there's only one field, one being, one love, one glory. And we are all that. We are that, what is, one with the one and only, the all that is, the all-encompassing field of glorious love, pure love, wild love, unbridled, pure and spotless, perfect love. How glorious, how glorious to just rest, absorbed, immersed, saturated, so deeply nourished in a field of glorious love. So the frequency field is still very active and flowing. The light is here. The radiance is here. The shining is here. Just receiving, just receiving. Divine wholeness is like a self-sustaining immaculate crystalline generator. It's ever in surrender to itself, ever flowing within itself in absolute devotion to itself. So immaculate, so pure, right? There's just absolutely not a speck of question, right? That's part of the key, that there's not a speck of questioning. And what we mean by that is that the wholeness never questions, am I whole? Because that question would diminish the integrity of wholeness, right? The integrity of wholeness is the undoubtable, absolute fullness of the undivided, the frequency of that which has never, could never. And so as we are opening here, we're receiving that frequency of the undivided integral wholeness, the immaculate glory, right? These kind of words can seem like, whoa there, Billy Horse, that's like way too perfect for me. But it's about receiving the frequency of perfection, of true wholeness, of the immaculate purity, the divinity, right? Innocence is another way of saying it. It's receiving the frequency of that which loves and has never, ever broken that love. Because as we receive the frequencies, the remembrance comes of just a sip of this explodes everything. Just a sip of this nectar, this nectarine bliss, just opens the depthful seeing. Just a little sip just recalibrates the nervous system, right? And yes, everything will continue to find its way. But as we sip the sweetness of the nectarine frequencies that are coming forward, the mother frequencies, it's the frequencies of Jai, Jai Ma. It's the frequencies of the victory that is already won, right? Jai Ma is like victory to the divine light. And it's not a victory even over darkness. It's a victory that is already won, right? It's not a battle. The mind makes it a battle. But it's the victory, the wholeness is the victory that is already won. It's the victory of wholeness. The victory. Right? So when we come to feel the Jai Ma, it's a resonant frequency recognition within that says the victory is already here. The celebration, the revelation is already here. Jai, Jai, Jai. It's not saying, let me crawl upon my knees and maybe one day I'll be worthy, but probably not. It's saying, Jai, Jai, Jai. The victory is already here. The glory is already glorious. Wholeness is already whole, right? So just sipping on that frequency is very pure and deeply, deeply nourishing. The overcoming of seeming ignorance isn't about changing ignorance to something else. It's about seeing that ignorance isn't actually what the mind thinks it is. It's seeing in the light. We could say that ignorance is maybe like the shadow, but in the light, it's not actually overcoming like a battle. It's actually seeing that there is no darkness in the true heart, that there is only light, that a light that gives, let's say, by virtue of which a seeming light and dark could be seen. The light by virtue of which, let's say, day and night could be seen. The light by virtue of which the sun and the moon could be seen. But the light of wholeness is the integral whole. It's not a result. It's not the winning of a battle. It's a realization that the battle is the mind's idea of division. It's realizing, Jai is realizing that there is no battle to win. The battle is won. The battle is won, right? There's nothing there. It's the seeing that the mind can never hold you captive. That what the mind believes holds you captive is not a journey to overcome and fix and change and make it right. It's seeing that perfection is already here, that the glory is already here, the being is already here. You are already perfect. And the frequency of this knowing is what illuminates the whole play of the life. So resting here in the Jai, in the Alleluia, in the Amen, right? In the wow, in the glory. The frequency of celebration is the frequency of heaven. It's the frequency of Satyaloka, the frequency of truth, of pure truth. So we just drink in the nectar of these frequencies. Recognizing that we are multidimensional beings and that we are operating, therefore, multidimensionally, multi-frequency. But the finest frequency that we're open to is what comes to the surface of life. This is our offering. This is the frequency of the life that is lived. Right? Whatever we could say we're identified with. So if we're identified with the story and the fear, then that will bring forward that frequency as in appearance. If we're identified with the glory, then that will bring forward the appearance of the glory.